I know sometimes we need to get dinner on the table and we don't want to take a lot of time to do it, and we want to do it all in one skillet or one pot or one pan. That way we can get it on the table fast and not have a bunch of cleanup afterwards. So these recipes today, I hope that you're going to fall in love with like my family has. The first one I'm making is a beefy and cheesy spinach and beef enchilada bake. And what I'm doing first is just chopping up my onions and a whole bunch of spinach. This is almost an entire bag of baby spinach. And then on the stove in my pan, that's an oven safe pan. It's cast iron enamel, so it's safe to go in the oven. I'm just cooking up either some beef you can use, or today I'm actually using ground sausage because that's what I had defrosted in my fridge. Now for the tortilla portion of this dish, I'm using about 6 organic flour tortillas. And if you're gluten-free or you just want a healthier option, you could use almond flour tortillas or cassava flour. There's so many options nowadays, so you can really just make it to your liking, make it to your kind of diet that you eat. And I'm just gonna cut those up into 1-inch strips, and we're gonna use that later on in the dish. Now I've added in my diced onion and I let that saute for a few minutes to soften. Now I'll go ahead and stir in all of the chopped spinach. Since this is an enchilada bake, or that kind of style of taco dish, I'm gonna go ahead and add in about 1.5 tablespoons of taco seasoning. You can either do a store-bought taco seasoning or homemade, either will work here. Then I'm adding in 1 16-ounce jar of red enchilada sauce. You could also use green enchilada sauce, that would be delicious in this as well. And then I stirred that all together along with 1 4-ounce can of little diced hatch green chilies. And they're a pretty mild chili pepper, but if you don't want any spice at all, you could definitely just leave that out and go with a mild red enchilada sauce. After that, I just topped it with all of my tortilla strips and I let that simmer for just a couple minutes to start to soften. And then I always have a little bit of shredded white cheddar in my fridge, so I pulled that out and then I'm just topping this dish with a little bit of that, and we're gonna go straight into the oven at 350 just for about 15 minutes or so with a lid on. That way the cheese stays nice and soft, and then the last couple minutes I'll pop it under the broiler and get things a little bit toastier. To finish it off, I like to add a little bit of cilantro, which if you're not a fan of cilantro, no problem at all. It's just as good without it, but I love the freshness it brings. And then I'm also going to dice up a few green onions or scallions and put that right over the top. And this is absolutely fantastic. It comes together so fast you won't believe it. It feels like you spent all day making it. Absolutely delicious, and this is definitely a family favorite. And if you're new to my channel, don't worry, I have all these recipes linked down below in the description box, or you can find them on my website, healthyelizabeth.com. For the next meal we're making, I'm measuring out bone broth and water, a combination of the two, and I'm cooking a little bit of jasmine brown rice that I had soaking in water just for a few minutes before I cooked it. That helps to kind of break down the rice and make it easier to digest. And so I'm just going to cook that according to package instructions in my oven safe skillet again, and then we'll get started on the rest of it. So this recipe is a really delicious and creamy chicken and brown rice bake. So it has lots of veggies in it and brown rice, pre-cooked chicken, so you can either put it in the Instant Pot or roast it in the oven, or you can even buy a rotisserie chicken, and it makes this recipe really easy. Now I'll put about 2 or 3 tablespoons of grass-fed butter in the bottom of my skillet after I removed all my rice that I was cooking in, so just 1 pot, and I'll take the onion that I diced up and red bell pepper, and I'll just saute those down for a few minutes with a little bit of garlic until they're nice and soft. Now, depending on whether you're gluten-free or not, I'm using a tablespoon of a good quality all-purpose flour here, but you could also substitute that with arrowroot powder, and that's a really great way to thicken the sauce without using gluten. And then I'm sprinkling in salt and pepper and a little bit of poultry seasoning, and that really just brings out all those cozy and comforting and homey flavors in this chicken and rice dish. I love it, so definitely don't skip out on the poultry seasoning. I just poured in some chicken bone broth again, and I'm also pouring in some heavy cream, and the roux we made with the butter and the flour is going to thicken our cream and bone broth sauce. So I'm just whisking that together, and I'll let that simmer for just 3 or 4 minutes, and it'll start to thicken up. And while that's happening, I'm going to grate up a little bit of Parmesan and get our chicken, peas, just frozen peas, ready to go in the pot. So once that sauce is simmered for a few minutes, you can go ahead and add in the Parmesan. And I forgot I wanted to save some to top our chicken and rice bake with, so I went ahead and removed a little bit, and I had to go back and grate some more. But a little extra Parmesan definitely is not going to hurt anything. So after that sauce is thickened up, I'm going to go ahead and add in all those frozen peas and our pre-cooked shredded chicken and the cooked jasmine brown rice. And then we'll stir that all together, season it with a little bit of salt and pepper, make sure you taste it, make sure the flavor is on point, and then spread everything out, and I'll top it with the reserved Parmesan. That is, if you remember to reserve it. Then you'll just cover it with a lid. I like to leave it a little bit open so it doesn't steam. It just keeps the top from browning. But if you don't have a lid, you can use foil or even unbleached parchment paper. And I'm just going to put that in the oven at about 375, and we'll cook it for 20 to 25 minutes. And it's up to you, but the last 5 minutes, I always like to give things like this just a little broil. That way the top is nice and brown and caramelized. This is just a really cozy meal on the weeknights or even on the weekends. We love eating stuff like this. And I know usually when you think healthy, you think of really light food, but I think whole foods and cozy meals just like this are healthy and really keep you feeling satisfied. This next recipe we're making is another example of that because it's savory and hearty, but made with really simple ingredients and just whole foods. So I'm chopping up some Yukon Gold potatoes. I always try to make sure that they're organic because they are on the Dirty Dozen list. So if you can get organic, that's great. Next, to cook these home fries, because we're making a breakfast home fry hash, I am going to actually fry up my potatoes in duck fat. It's a really good, healthy fat. It's kind of like tallow or ghee. And if you can't get your hands on that, just use avocado oil or bacon grease from Good Quality Bacon. Any of those things will work here. And I'm just going to get a nice cast iron skillet really heated up and make sure I have plenty of oil in the bottom of that. And I'm going to add in 1 diced onion and 1 green bell pepper. And you could also use red bell pepper. I actually just did this the other day with that, and it was really good. So you could do either bell pepper or yellow, whatever you want. And I'm just going to saute those down a little bit. I'm going to add in my potatoes and then season it with what I call house seasoning. So it has salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder. And then to add a little bit of depth and beautiful color, I'm sprinkling in about a teaspoon of sweet paprika. And if you want a smokier flavor, you could even do smoked paprika, but the duck fat does kind of already have that roasted smoky flavor. After I toss all the potatoes and bell peppers in that seasoning, I press it down a little bit until it's in one layer, and I'll cook that for about 15 minutes, turning just once the bottom of the potatoes is nice and golden. After that, this is optional, but I like to add in just about a handful of that sharp raw cheddar cheese that I like to use. And when you bake it, it gives it almost like a crusty consistency. My kids love it. So I added that in, and then I'm going to crack in eggs on top, and then we'll bake it off in the oven. So that's how you kind of make those breakfast style hashes. I like to start it off on the stove, and then I'll crack in my eggs and I'll put it in the oven and let it bake off just for about 7 or 8 minutes until my eggs are cooked through, but my yolks are still nice and soft and jammy. I'm putting this in my preheated oven to about 375 degrees, and I'll just cook that for about 7-8 minutes until those egg yolks are just how I like it. And I love this recipe because if you have a family of 3 or a family of 6, you can just crack in that many eggs, and it kind of helps to easily stretch the meal. And it's also really good even leftover. I know I'm always searching for the balance between eating healthy, feeding your kids that may be picky, and feeding my husband. I feel like everybody has a little bit of a different diet, but this is something that can satisfy everybody, and it's just really family friendly. And I feel like we all need those recipes that are just kind of go-to family meals to keep everybody satisfied. And you can always pair these things with a salad and with a vegetable, and it kind of helps to just make really balanced meals that you're not going to get tired of.